My friends, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for responding to my call for aid. YouTube is now reportedly placing a heavy emphasis on viewer engagement, saying that views without engagement count less or not at all with the algorithm. I shared this info with you and you responded in outstanding fashion, rallying to our banner here at the center of the earth. But the fight is not over. Please keep helping us out by clicking the like button on videos, leaving a comment, subscribing, or even sending a super thanks, as all of these count as viewer engagement and help us keep going on YouTube. Thank you so much for your support, my friends. And now, on to the video. My friends, I have seen Fantastic Four First Steps, and I'm here today to give you my spoiler-free review. I went into the theater hoping against hope to finally see a good Fantastic Four movie, to see this quartet that was so essential in building the Marvel Comics universe get a fair shake on the big screen at last. For a while in the 60s, the Fantastic Four comics proclaimed on their covers the world's greatest comic magazine, and you know what? That level of pride was justified. Thanks to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, it was the greatest. And yet, every single time Hollywood has offered up a Fantastic Four movie, it's been a disappointment in one regard or another, and that's mind-blowing given how important those comics were, how groundbreaking, how epic, an explosion of creativity that still echoes today. Early reviews of Fantastic Four First Steps over the past few days made me feel some excitement, I won't lie. People saying the MCU is back, that this movie kicks ass, it's a masterpiece, it's a spectacle. I walked into this theater with hope in my heart, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in years going into a Marvel movie. So the question is, did this movie break the curse? Did I come out of that theater feeling like I had finally seen the Fantastic Four? I've had to take some time making this review. I hoped to have it out yesterday, but the way this movie made me feel is very, very hard to describe. You know, folks, some movies just kind of sap your will to live. Not literally, I guess. Not like if you offered me the choice of continuing to watch Fantastic Four First Steps or suddenly ceasing to exist, I'd pick continuing to watch. But yeah, I'm struggling here to describe the kind of weird, joyless void I inhabited in the 2 hours I was watching the movie. A void empty of both pain and pleasure. I'm really struggling to express how I felt watching this movie because it wasn't good exactly, but it didn't suck horribly either. To describe it as meh is perhaps too optimistic and unfair to the term meh, but to describe it as shit is wrong as well. It's definitely not shit. It was kind of like watching an episode of a sitcom where the jokes aren't too funny, but they are familiar. The situations aren't terribly fraught, but they're a little bit amusing. It's amiable without being overly engaging, better than watching the news, but not something good enough to keep you from checking your phone for messages every few minutes. I'm going to do my best to give you an overview of what I saw without spoilers, but that really handcuffs me because the worst parts of this movie are the various plot holes that just don't make sense. But that's all right. I'll do a spoiler-specific review early next week ahead of our group review on Pop Culture Breakdown. But those of you watching this right now want to know, what did I think of this movie? Okay, deep breath, Doomcock. Let's talk about the good things in this movie first. This movie is a step forward for Marvel and is indeed the best MCU movie in years. It's going to play much better for normies, I suspect, than it will for Fantastic Four fans like me, because liberties are taken with the comics we loved, and as a fan, I found that disappointing. But this movie kinda gets worse and worse the more you think about it. It lulls you into a powder blue haze of mild indifference, to where it doesn't seem overtly woke at the time, but when you break it down, it's insidiously woke. And while it doesn't seem awful when you're watching it, there are some awful plot holes in it. And yet, even with all this, it's still better than Captain America Brave New World or the Marvels or the Eternals. A step up, Perhaps. Is the MCU back? Perhaps not. Still, objectively, it's less obviously woke and less cringe-awful than shit like Ironheart and She-Hulk and Agatha all along, so one hopes that maybe Marvel can build on this. But they're gonna have to do better with Avengers Doomsday or they're totally screwed. The highlight of this movie is seeing Galactus at last. Gotta give credit to Marvel. It's always fun to see a giant monster stomp around in a city, and Galactus is no exception. It's unfortunate, perhaps, that he doesn't rampage exactly. Destruction of the city is not really his primary objective, but for what it is, we do finally get to see a pretty faithful adaptation of Galactus from the comics. Now, obviously, they gave us the Silver Surfette instead of the Silver Surfer. There's no way around that little snafu, but Julia Garner does a very good job playing the Silver Surfette, who is actually one of the more nuanced and interesting characters in the movie. Go figure. Of course, that's kind of a criticism as well, since the movie is called The Fantastic Four and not The Silver Surfette. As for the actors playing the main characters, they're all pretty much okay at doing what they do. Vanessa Kirby is clearly a good actress. She was better than I thought she'd be. Joseph Quinn is an affable fellow who plays a mildly impulsive and sort of vaguely prankster-ish version of Johnny Storm. Eben Moss-Bachrach is a very calm and subdued Ben Grimm who comes across as a nice guy, which is unfortunate given that calm, subdued, and nice aren't adjectives you generally apply to the Thing in the comic books, and Pedro Pascal delivers a competent performance as a kind of mid-level manager type of guy who happens to be named Reed Richards. None of them suck. There's nothing in their performances that's problematic, really. I guess the main criticism I'd level here is these people are not the Fantastic Four. And by that I mean not the heroes we love from the comic books. They're just not. Johnny isn't a hothead, isn't into speed or thrills, isn't immature or juvenile. He's more like a lab assistant to Reed, who has a touch of being young at heart. He researches things like languages and translations, stuff like that. Not exactly the womanizing, callous teenager tooling around in a hot rod. Ben Grimm isn't a clobbering time kind of guy, because unlike in the comics, Ben isn't constantly angry at being turned into an orange rock thing. The unfortunate fact that Ben is now a freak of sorts is hardly mentioned at all in this movie, and yet it's one of the defining characteristics of the Thing in the comics, the anger that he was transformed into a monster, the angst at the humanity he lost. This aspect of Ben Grimm is only mentioned once in the whole movie, when Reed basically expresses guilt for screwing up on the whole cosmic ray encounter that turns Ben into a Thing, and Ben says, don't worry about it. That sound like the Fantastic Four to you? Likewise, Sue is no longer a girl smitten by her crush on the older Reed Richards. She's pretty much the leader of the group in temperament, if not in title. Very calm, very mature, very together. And Pedro Pascal is nothing like Reed Richards. I said he was miscast right from the start, and now I can authoritatively state Pedro Pascal was miscast. This isn't the Reed Richards you're looking for. The guy is not a bad actor. He's just not Reed Richards. So, now that I've seen this movie, it's fascinating to me that while I can't put my finger on any acting deficiency in particular, I can tell you these four people have no chemistry at all. They don't grate against each other, but they also aren't terribly interesting together. They just kind of get along like people in an office where everybody tries to keep it genial. There's no spark that ignites this film, and thus in a sense, the movie title is false advertising, because this is not the Fantastic Four. In the comics, there was a lot of conflict within the team. Johnny always wisecracking and getting on Ben's nerves. Ben struggling with anger towards Reed for the mistake that mutated him into the Thing. Sue always grappling with Reed's neglect and laser-like focus on scientific problems and cosmic conundrums. And Reed, always distracted, always grave, with the fate of the world on his shoulders. The personal problems of these characters, their interpersonal conflicts, their desires, their heartaches, their disappointments, there's none of this in Fantastic Four First Steps. So I suppose if you're not a fan of the comics, you may find this tepid version perfectly acceptable, and that's fine. On the surface, it's an okay movie. But as a huge fan of the comics, I have to say, this wasn't the Fantastic Four at all. And that's a huge problem with a Fantastic Four movie. As for the look of this movie, I've heard a lot of talk online about how it's visually stunning, how amazing the world building is, how dynamic the effects are. Well, I don't know what movie they were seeing. The movie is surprisingly murky in a lot of places, bathed in a constant shade of blue tint that kind of leaches any excitement out of the light from the screen before it hits your eyes. I'm convinced that this particular shade of blue will be licensed by mental health institutions to keep patients calm. It has a great sedative effect, my friends. That much I will give it. The soundtrack is okay, kind of generic. Nothing stood out for me in that regard. And now we come to the baby. The baby. Oh, dear Lord, the baby. My friends, the baby is the whole point of this movie. Everything in one way or the other revolves around the baby. It's no spoiler at all to say that, since they put a lot of this baby stuff in the trailers and preview scenes that they've released already. Like the scene where they tell the family she's pregnant, they prep for the baby this, baby that, Galactus wants the baby, the world is like, why not give the baby to Galactus and make him go away? I guess if you're like me and you don't go gaga over babies, you're just shit out of luck in this movie. I certainly was. I mean, shit, in a powder blue bassinet, couldn't we get at least one damn movie introducing this team without the damn baby as an anchor, as a pall cast over everything? See the team in all their previous exciting adventures that they hint at in the first few minutes, instead of this one, where the baby is in reality the fifth member of the team, because in one way or another, this whole damn movie revolves around the kid. Even when it's not around, it's Godot, dominating the plot, even in its absence. Never work with kids and animals, the old show business adage goes. I wish the writers had heeded that warning. Oh, God, I really wanted to enjoy this movie. I really wanted to give this movie a fair shake and a good review, but I just gotta be honest, folks. Now, the worst parts of this movie are plot specific, and I can't go into those now to keep this spoiler free, but as I said, I'll be giving you a spoiler specific review later next week, and we will be reviewing this as a group on Pop Culture Breakdown, but to sum up, Fantastic Four First Steps is an improvement from Marvel, that's undeniable. This is indeed one of the best MCU movies in recent years, faint praise perhaps, but I do think it will probably play better for normies than for Fantastic Four fans, but as a fan myself, I really wish this had been the Fantastic Four in more than name only. From the center of the earth, this is Dictor Van Doomcock bidding you all, my friends, stay angry. Ha 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 ha.